I want to start is what I was doing last night, which was digital ray. You've now, I think the thought you're putting into this digital twin, we'd call it, I guess you call it sort of an AI clone, and how you're, first of all, let's say, why are you doing this? Because I think you're rolling it out in a different way than I've seen other leaders do that. And nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you. Thank you. You know, for most of the last 50 years, what I've done, and I recommend to other people, is that whenever I would be in a position of making decisions, I would think about the criteria that I would use to make those decisions, and I would write them down, and that helped me think them through. It helped me communicate with other people. And then if I put them in computer code, I could then backtest them. I could have a game plan. And I did that for 40 years, maybe, something like that. And I did it about everything, not just the investing. I did it about how to manage my company and all of that. And that, I did it by artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence meant computer would make the decision, but I did it through expert systems and a great team that helped me do that. And so that there's been this evolution. I created an app for inside the company, which I called the Coach, that people could go to and ask questions and so on. And it evolved. And then I evolved into the stage of my life, which I'm now in, which is I want to pass along thoughts or ideas or principles that help me. And then AI, as we now know it, came along. And so this was a natural extension of that. And it made me very clearly understand how different that is than LLMs and...
Well, an autonomous agent, I'm curious, will we see digital ray give us advice on gold or any of the other, like, I would worry about that. Can it give us investing advice, or are you deliberately staying away from that?
The purpose of this is really for me to convey principles and understanding. Like it should do whatever I want to do, right, and do it well. And it's very different from LLMs. LLMs and those types, they don't have values, they don't have personality, they don't have, you can't say to it, who do you love, or what wine do you like, or anything like that. So there's a big difference between those generic decision makers and so on, and the person. And so what I wanted to do was communicate well with people. And so right now, a lot of people would like to have conversations with me. We can do that now because of all of that. So we literally can have conversations, but it requires the curating of that and to make sure that that's the same as the conversations that I would have. And so, you know, like we all can have conversations rather than just I'm up here answering your questions. Why not have conversations? And I think it's going to be, you know, fantastic. So, because it'll be, you know, like, what do I want it to be? Not only me being able to communicate and operate that way, but also I can make a better me than in some ways. Because what I learned through my experiences is that what the computer could do was many things I couldn't do, like process a lot of information quickly and fast and, you know, and unemotionally and with a lot of thought and so on. And so I can make a better me, but it has to be me believing it's great and me communicating.
Well, it's, I mean, and I'll get to the real, you know.
And I think, by the way,
real Ray Dalio in a minute. Should it, do you want it to outlive you? It feels like that kind of Gilgamesh, you know.
Only, I don't care too much about that thing. The real question about the outlive is only whether it can be good and useful, okay? In other words, I wouldn't want it to escape my sense of, yeah, that's great.
Right.
And it could teach me and I can teach it. It's a partner. Everything that's going on in AI has to be a partnership.
Yeah.
Once you understand that it's in the value of that partnership, that you're only going to be able to quality control it and so on. So it's the partnership that matters. So, if it's a better partnership, but if it can evolve without me, I'm not sure it can.
Yeah, it feels a
then
bit
I don't know.
Dorian Gray, you never know. It may evolve to something you never intended to be. But let me go back to So the real Ray Dalio, for I think more than 40 years, you've been going to China. In fact, I'd say you helped to really design the thinking behind the financial system there. And we are on the cusp of a very important meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping in China. I'd love to get your thoughts right now as to, you've just come back from Beijing recently. Give us a sense of what the thinking is and what you would expect. Because I feel like we don't have a lot of insights right now into what's happening there.
I think we have to understand that we're in a new time and a new world order. And in that world order, some things are unsustainable. There's a great competition and there are different kinds of wars. There's a technology war, a financial war, geopolitical war. There could be a military war and so on. And given that dynamic, there's a certain interdependencies and problems that go along with that. For example, the model that China exports to the United States goods, earns money from that, takes that money then and buys the bonds, has created an interdependency that is unsustainable because there's a creditor-debtor relationship. And there are so many intertwined dependencies that are threatening because, so for example, it's understandable that the Chinese might worry that they could be cut off from the value of the bonds that they may not get, and so they tend to want to buy, maybe not have as much debt, and they would buy more gold. That means they lend less money to the United States and so on.
See a new
so there are a
trade
number of what I'm saying is, these interdependencies are also used as pressure points and so on in every way. So we're coming into a world in which, most importantly, how can you look at that list of interdependencies and you say, how can I be safe? And now in this world, they're also looking at how can I use that country's interdependency as a weapon. And in that world, we're now coming to have that breakdown. Now, whether that's done peacefully or not is the question. I think that everybody recognizes now that it's very important that that is done peacefully. So if they can go above it and say, well, you can understand I'm not necessarily going to view your bonds as very good, and they could say, I can't depend, the United States can say, I can't depend that you're going to sell me these things.
What's an optimal deal in your mind between the U.S. and China at this point? Because it gets to some of the principles you talk about in how countries go broke. What does success look like from where you sit?
Well, for the immediate term, it's that they don't hurt each other so much that they raise the stakes and get into a bigger fight. For the longer term, it is that if they can almost go above it and understand each country's circumstances and find out how can they make arrangements so that there is a realignment of things so that they can produce good outcomes. There's a challenge in doing that because any administration, or even the current administration, might change their mind. So deals are very difficult. We're now more in a deal world than we are in a long-term relationship world. That includes also the political system, because you could change who the leader is, and then you're going, and what does treaties mean? They don't mean. So I think the important thing to realize is that we've changed the world order in a world that used to be a multilateral world order shaped by the United States, in which, after World War II, there were organizations like the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations, in which there was supposed to be a system for collective decision-making by these rules, and that's over. And now we're in a world where power matters, and so they're in that world of power mattering, and the uses of these powers, what we hope for is that that doesn't become so damaging that it really is a problem for the world.
So talk a little bit about the Middle East. since we're here, you've been coming here a long time as well. And with that shifting world order, we're certainly seeing this become a more powerful hub and also a hub that's having different alliances as well. What are you seeing and what?
I think the Gulf countries that are operating under the most wonderful evolutionary process of which there's the vibrancy, the freedom, the ability to be creative and productive, the inclusivity of people. It's a wonderful, wonderful environment that is being produced by leaders who truly believe that that's the better way, to be peaceful and prosperous together in a world, in an area which is very, very difficult to pull that off in. And so you see really a clash of values that's going on. So I think it's quite an exceptional region. It's a region, the Gulf states, really.
Of course, yeah.
It's, and with great leadership and so on. So we're seeing that. Why are we here? Why do people come here? How are they operating? And it's really that visionary leadership that's something. When I first met MBS or MBZ and so on, the clarity of the aspiration and the ability to then make a transformation from something that couldn't have been more different to what it is and where it's going is quite something.
So everybody always comes to you for investing advice. I know that you've, gold, everything else. I want to, before we get a little bit to that, talk about the U.S. and the clarity of aspiration there. What are you seeing in terms of just how it's unfolding with regard to the U.S. economy? You often talk about the risks, the tariffs. Talk about the vision there.
I think that the issue is very much that you can't look at the U.S. as a whole nowadays. You have to look at everything in terms of the very, very big differences and how those differences are handled, right? So if you're looking at, let's say, the AI world and really what amounts to about 3 million people, 1% of the population, leading, and then really let's say the 5 or 10% around them, you have one world that the whole world is dependent on. And then you have the bottom 60% of the population. Consider this, 60% of the American population has below a 6th grade reading level. And that's tough. And so—
Test scores are going down, too.
And with that, almost becoming useless or unproductive. And because of those things, you have a dependency, an extreme dependency. Is it a bubble? Is it not a bubble? We will debate that. We will eventually find out.
Where do you fall on that?
But in any case, it is in itself an issue. And so when you interview people, it's a world issue, not just in the United States. Yeah. You're going to be interviewing the Chancellor of the Exchequer for the UK. Okay, there's not enough money. There's a big wealth gap. Okay, so now the question is, what do they do when you don't have enough money and you have this big wealth gap? Then do you go get the money?
Do you have advice?
And then people run.
I can convey advice this afternoon. What advice do you have for the Chancellor?
Well, first of all, I guess recognize that it's a very difficult decision, and then you have to get to the mechanics of it, right? Deal with it as a mechanical, not an ideological thing. And on that basis, what you have is a choice of who's going to pay. How are you going to do this? I would say be very practical as to what is the implications of losing people who have wealth. Can you grab their wealth? What is it going to be relative to them productivity? There's only one good path, and that is to create productivity. If there's a wealth gap difference, it's because there's a productivity difference.
Yep.
And you have to make most of the people productive, and you find the way to be most of it. So how can you be attractive and make places productive? And then you have to deal with the devaluation of the money. There's different kinds of money. It all has a claim. So debt is somebody's promise to pay.
Yep.
Who's going to pay? Are the debtors then going to have their money devalued? What is the best mechanics to deal with this very difficult situation?
Well, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I think the area of money is fascinating. What do you think we misunderstand? You know, you get asked a lot about gold. I know you said at one point people have maybe 15% of their portfolio in gold. Yeah, and the U.S. dollar. What are you trying to convey around
I
how
think
to think
that
about
people
that?
don't understand gold. Like they think of gold as being is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? It's a speculative thing. Gee, I don't know about getting into gold and so on. And they don't realize that it's almost like cash. It is an alternative form of money. In fact, it is the oldest form of money. And I'm not just giving you that opinion because it's the second largest money, currency that central banks hold for that.
Yep.
And so to recognize that, okay, so think of it as almost a type of cash that is an alternative type of cash that also diversifies their other kind of cash. For example, its real returns are negatively correlated with most of their other assets and their cash for reasons we don't have time to get into. But if you're saying that, just like you would say, how much cash should I have in my portfolio without necessarily thinking cash is a speculative thing to bet on, you should think how much, in a sense, gold should I have in my portfolio. Given its characteristics and just a strategic asset allocation, you know, what is its expected return, what's its correlation and the like, you would have something like maybe, I don't know, 10% of the portfolio.
Now 10%.
Or some 10 or, it's between 5 and 15%.
To be continued.
It's between 5 and 15%, depending on your particular circumstances. But the answer to your question is to look at it that way. Don't look at it as in the other way, and you just ask yourself, do I have that amount? And by having that amount, it'll diversify my portfolio.
So much more to talk about, and I'm going to ask Digital Ray when I get home tonight. Please join me in thanking Ray Dalio, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.